Hello, welcome to another video. As you can tell from the thumbnail and the title, today is my guide to Leigh Bardugo's The Grishaverse. So, as I said, unless you have been under a rock, you've possibly noticed there is a new series of Shadow and Bone on Netflix. Shadow and Bone is the first book in the Grishaverse series, but I thought I would talk you through the kind of series as a whole. Grishaverse is made up of 3 series, 1 trilogy and 2 duologies. I think that's how it is at the moment. I believe that there is going to be, that Leigh is making the Six of Crows duology into a trilogy, but I don't think anything has been confirmed yet. I think that is a little bit more than a rumour, but not yet 100%. So I'm just going to go with what we've got out so far. So this video, I'm going to try and break it down into chapters. I'm going to talk about what the Grishaverse is, my recommended reading order, and recommended reading age, and also books to read after you've read the Grishaverse. So let's get into it with what the Grishaverse is. So the Grishaverse, I'm going to say it starts with Shadow and Bone. It is a, so it's a 3 series. That makes sense in my head. Basically, there's 3 series that make up the whole of the Grishaverse. But Shadow and Bone is kind of the start. So in the Grishaverse, our magic system, our magic users are the Grisha. There are 3 different types of Grisha, and I can never remember their names, so I'm going to actually read them out. So we've got the Corporalki, which are the Order of the Living and the Dead. They wear red. And so we've got heartrenders and healers in there. So that's people who can heal things, people who can also, basically, it's things that you can do with the body. So you've got, obviously, healers, but heartrenders can not only heal, but they can kind of stop blood. They can amputate, things like that. They can play around with death a bit more. They can kill. You've then got the Etheralki, the Order of the Summoners. They wear blue. So we've got Squallers, Inferni and Tidemakers in there. So the Etheralki are all kind of, I guess, sort of elemental magic users. So your Squallers can control the wind, Tidemakers can control the sea, Inferni can control fire. And again, everything that works with that. And then you've got the Materialki, which are the Order of the Fabricators, including the Durasts and the Alchemy. They wear purple and they make things effectively. I don't remember off the top of my head exactly who we've got who are Durasts at Alchemy, but they're people who can make things out of magic. So that might be making weapons, it might be making buildings, it might be making whatever, but can fabricate things. So our 3, let me find a map as well. I am clearly well organised today. Here is our map of the Grishaverse. Our Grisha live in Ravka, over here. And that is where the Grishas sort of go to study. Oz Alta, the main capital, is where their magic school is. And that's where the bulk of the Shadow and Bone series takes place, is in Ravka. In the world, we have got, I'm going to have to try and find it in a different map on this one. We've got, you can see, so we've got Ravka's over here. We've got down here the island of Ketterdam. Well, the island of Kerch, and Ketterdam is the main city. That is where the second series, Six of Crows, takes place. And then we've also got other places on the map where we do visit. We've got Shuhan down at the bottom, which does come into play in the 3rd series in King of Scars, and also Fjorda up at the top, which comes into play in Six of Crows. Actually, it comes into play in all 3 of them, to be fair, but mostly in the 2nd and 3rd series. So the series is based on these magic users. Other people in the world don't have power, don't necessarily have magic, and our magic users are either revered or hated, depending on what part of the world you are in. So it is this really interesting kind of view of the world of again, depending on what side you're on, you're either revering and really loving these magic users and use magic for a lot, or you're fearful and hate the magic users and are trying to wipe them out. So really interesting. I'm going to... So the plot of the Grishaverse, so we start off with Shadow and Bones, except this is a trilogy. We've got Shadow and Bone, Siege and Storm, and Ruin and Rising. This series primarily follows Alina. She is a new Grisha and she's been tested and discovered that she is very powerful. In the beginning of the book there is something called, I can't remember, called the Unsee. This big kind of crack here, which splits Ravka in half. This is a darkness, basically, which you can't cross. There are things that live in it that will kill you if you try and cross. So it's effectively split Ravka, like I said, split Ravka in half, but made it almost impossible to get to the other side. Grisha do cross, but it is incredibly dangerous and not all will survive. So you have to really be quite determined if you're wanting to get across the Unsee. Alina is suspected to be a Grisha of the Light. She's thought to be a new saint, and she is thought to be able to defeat the Unsee, which has been created by another Grisha, a dark Grisha called the Darkling. So everybody loves the Darkling. The Darkling is, again, one of the characters that you will have probably heard of, who everyone is like, hello. And in this trilogy as well, we do get mention of another fan favourite, which is Nikolai. And again, he does come into play. He doesn't have a huge character arc in this series. He is involved. He is he's a secondary character, but he's not like a full main character in this series. But in this one, we're following Alina trying to defeat the darkness. Classic case of good versus evil, basically. It's fast-paced, it's exciting, there's quests, there's a bit of a romance in there, there's a couple of romances in there, but I would say that it basically kind of gives you everything that you want from a YA fantasy. It's just a really fantastic kind of quest story. This wraps up quite nicely in itself. We then move on to the second series in the overarching Grishaverse, which is the Six of Crows duology. So like I was saying earlier, I believe that Leigh Bardugo is writing a third in this one. She hasn't yet, and I don't believe I don't believe there's anything announced yet, but I think it is coming. But I'm only going to talk about them as a duology because that is all that exists at the moment. So we've got Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. This is my favourite duology series of the Grishaverse. In this one, we are in Ketterdam. We're in a completely different part of the world, and we're following Kaz Brecker, who I am wearing on my shirt today. Kaz is a criminal, and he and his little mates, but his gang, who are the Crows, they have been basically given a task to break into this prison. So this is a heist story, which I love. So he's gathered up his crows. So Kaz is known as Dirty Hands. He walks with a cane and he always wears gloves, but he will get his hands dirty. You've got Inej, who is basically an amazing knife wielder. You've got Nina, who is a Grisha. You've got Matthias, who comes from Fjorda, from the north. There is throughout a big rivalry between Ravka and Fjorda. So the northern Fjordans really, really hate the Grisha. They believe the Grisha are absolute like devil spawn and they should be destroyed. So the fact that we've got a Ravkin and a Fjordan together, and one is a Grisha and one is a soldier, makes for tension. Then you have got Wylan, who is a kind of spoiled kid who's sort of run away, and then you've got Jesper, who is a sharpshooter with a gambling problem. So you've got these 6 people who are all working on this mission, and again, it's a criminal gang. So if they pull off this mission, they get a load of money. Sweet. But this one, the characters are incredible. The stakes are so high. There is so much tension with the characters. I absolutely adored it. There is again a romance. There's a couple romance plots in here which I thought were fantastic. There is a queer romance plot in here which again we love to see. And I just, by the end of the Crooked Kingdom, I was sobbing my poor little eyes out. I adored this and I'm really overdue a reread. And then the final series we've got is King of Scars and Rule of Wolves. So King of Scars follows Nikolai, like I said from the first one, fan favourite Nikolai. In the Shadow and Bone trilogy, he gets attacked and is slightly changed from the happy-go-lucky prince he was at the beginning. So this is his story, and him. So this one follows a few different perspectives. So it follows Nikolai, it follows Zoya, who is again a Grisha that we've met in the Shadow and Bone series, and it also follows Nina, who we meet in Six of Crows. This is, in my opinion, not the best series in the Grishaverse. This, in my opinion, felt a little bit like fan pandering. It feels like King of Scars was written because everybody loves Nikolai rather than because it's a story that needed to be told. However, I did enjoy where we went with this. Some of my favourite characters are Nina and Matthias, so the fact that we get Nina's point of view a bit more in these books makes me very, very happy. But in these ones, again, I can't tell you too much on the plot because they are directly related to the end of the events of the last two series. So I'm going to leave those ones there and get into reading order. So the reading order for the Grishaverse, I would say, is quite simple. I would say always start with Shadow and Bone. So it goes Shadow and Bone, Siege and Storm, Ruin and Rising. I think these give you a really good intro to the magic system and to the world. Next, I'd pick up Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. These basically have a lot less magic in them. There is still a lot of the magic system involved in these, but it is a lot less front and centre. But I think it's really useful to have got that grounding first before you pick these up. Because again, there are I'd say there's a couple of cameos in these of characters that came from this series. I actually read these the wrong way round. I read Six of Crows first and then read Shadow and Bone afterwards. Didn't really impact my enjoyment, but I realised when I'd read these ones that the cameos that were in here, I hadn't enjoyed as much as I would have if I'd known who they were if I'd read them first. So yeah, these ones first, these ones second. But like I said, those ones are interchangeable. However, you do need to have read all 5 of those before you get into this series. As I was saying earlier, both King of Scars and Rule of Wolves lead on from events that happened at the end of Ruin and Rising and at the end of Crooked Kingdom. So you need to have finished both of those series before you can pick up this series. Time-wise, these ones do go first, and these take place about 10 years later, I would say. So Nina, who we follow in Six of Crows, I don't know if she's mentioned by name, but she is in this series as a young child. I think she's about like 7 or 8 in this series, so she isn't actually featured. She just makes a cameo. If she's even mentioned by name, I'm not 100% sure if she is mentioned by name. So from the start of book 1 and the start of book 1, there is about a sort of, I'd say about a 10-year gap. However, this takes place over a couple of years. And then King of Scars takes place quite soon after the end of Crooked Kingdom. But yes, that would be what I would say the reading order would be. Read the trilogy first, Six of Crows second, King of Scars third. And in terms of reading age, I would say these are all YA. I am giving these ones to my nephew who is 11 to read, and I think they are absolutely acceptable for 11, 12-year-olds. I read them all as an adult, so I read the whole series when I was actually probably in my 30s, and again really enjoyed them. But I would say YA stories, there isn't any swearing, there isn't any smut, there isn't anything that is not suitable for younger readers. So I would say, yeah, almost from about 11 or 12, if you've got children who are comfortable reading longer books and they like fantasy, this is a fantastic series to give a go. But otherwise, you know, if not, I would say you're probably looking at kind of around about 15, 16 is probably the kind of targeted age. The characters in the books, so in Shadow and Bone, I think Alina is meant to be about 16. In Six of Crows, I feel they're slightly older. I think they're about 18. And again, King of Scars, because it takes place after both series, the characters are in their early 20s, I believe. But again, there is nothing that makes these adult books. They are YA books. Finally, some recommendations of books to read after you've read the Grishaverse. So the first one I'm going to recommend is the one that I don't physically have on my shelves. I think I lent it to my sister. I don't know quite where it is, but that is The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. I think this series is fantastic, and I think if you really enjoy the tension, particularly in the Six of Crows duology, then you'll like The Cruel Prince as well. The next one I'm going to recommend is Serpent and Dove by Shelby Mahuin. Again, if you like this sort of magic, and in the Shadow and Bone series as a whole, there is a lot of trying to almost keep your magic to yourself and not believing in your own magic, and hiding it, and there is that kind of theme coming through as well in Serpent and Dove, which I really enjoy. If you like the expansive universe and being able to read lots of different parts in the same universe, I would say go to Cassandra Clare and the Shadowhunters. I've picked up Clockwork Angel rather than Shadow and Bone. Shadow and Bone is the first one, but I feel that I prefer Clockwork Angel. This series is set in the past, which I think also ties into the Shadow and Bone kind of era, which is, so Ravka is kind of based on like old pre-imperial Russia. Fjorda is, I guess, like Scandinavia, and Ketterdam is, I would say, kind of like Victorian country, like time, maybe slightly more modern. So I'd say if you liked that kind of expansive universe, but you like this slightly not modern setting, try The Infernal Devices. The Infernal Devices. And finally, my last recommendation is The Curse of Saints by Katie Dramis. This one is an adult romance. This one is an adult fantasy romance. However, I think if you enjoyed the magic system, the tension of the romance, then give this one a go. This, while it is a fantasy romance, it is incredibly romance light. I personally don't believe it is a fantasy romance. I know that is how it is classified, but the romance is so light to almost be non-existent. So again, I would say that while this one is more adult themed, this would be perfectly acceptable for older teens. But if you liked the magic system, if you liked the tension, if you liked the coming together, the group having to come together and work together, try Curse of Saints. So that was my recommendations and guide to the Grishaverse series. I hope you have enjoyed. Let me know if you have read the Grishaverse series, and let me know if there's any other books that you would recommend to people who have read the Grishaverse and want to continue in that same sort of theme. If you like this video, please leave me a like, comment down below, subscribe if you'd like to, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!